Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special interview today. Before we begin, I would like to uh, I would like to clarify that this recording is solely for college assignment purposes and will be used for grading purposes. So we are honored to have us with us today a distinguished expert in leadership coaching who is sharing insights on recruiting Indigenous people. So before we begin, let's extend a special thanks to Brenda LaRose for joining us. She is recognized as one of Canada's most prominent specialists in Indigenous leadership and broad diversity, with over 25 years of experience across executive search, coaching, talent advisory, and governance, a certified leadership coach, certified management consultant, and chartered professional in human resource. She leverages her deep breadth of executive experience to provide leadership and career coaching for individuals across all levels, helping them achieve their career objectives. So prior to launching BL Talent Solutions, she founded and led one of Canada's most respected national executive search firms. Following its acquisition by Leaders International Executive Search, she developed and led their national broad diversity search practice, supporting clients across all industries. She is a Métis citizen, speaks regularly at national conferences on topics related to best practices in Indigenous and broader executive, board, and also coaching engagement. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today.
My pleasure,
Yeah. So before we dive into our discussion, can you please briefly introduce yourself and your role?
Well, I think you did a very nice job of actually giving me a good introduction. So yes, I'm a chartered professional in HR, but my area of expertise would be recruitment and selection, and I've done that at all levels throughout my career. Yeah, and I am an Indigenous woman from the Red River Valley in Manitoba originally, but lived and worked all over Canada.
Yeah. So to start with, can you share insights into the importance of understanding Indigenous culture and values while recruiting Indigenous people?
Well, what I can share is this. It's not a one size fits all. It's not the same for everybody. It would be similar to, other cultures. The biggest misconception by most people in Canada is that Indigenous people are pretty much all the same, and they're not. A Cree person, a First Nations Cree person, could be as different to a Mohawk Haudenosaunee person as a Chinese person, Asian person to, let's say, Japanese person. They're just not the same. And then, so we have a lot of varieties of different cultures in Canada relating to Indigenous. There's three basic groups, of course. The First Nations, there's 634. And then also we have the Métis, and we also have the Inuit people, from the north. But even amongst ourselves, we're very different, so that is the biggest misconception. I mean, if somebody comes from a rural community or was raised in an urban community, their lived experience is different, but their cultures are different too. And even two Cree First Nations that are 20 miles apart could be very, very different from each other. So that's the biggest misconception, is they're not all the same. And the best example, because I'm a bit of a storyteller, is I have two, I have a good acquaintance that's, immigrated from Egypt. And I also have next door neighbors who is also Egyptian as well. And they're totally different. I mean, one practices Christianity, the other practices, he's a Muslim. So, and we're close to both of them, but they're not all the same. They're all different, and same thing in in our community. So it always depends, right?
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. So moving forward with building relationships with these indigenous communities. So what strategies can organizations use to build meaningful relationships with these communities and also the potential candidates?
Well, I think understanding a little bit about their background, their experiences, and their values, individually, and again, it's different for all people. I think that as a recruiter, because Canada's Indigenous population, there's a lot of people that you could draw from. It would be important to understand, if you're recruiting in Canada, also the culture, like a general overview of it in general, but just keeping in mind that it's individual, just like people that you are interviewing one-on-one, they're all individual people. So asking questions that actually you're able to assess, their competencies, their experiences, but also what is a good fit for them. And the one thing about Indigenous people is the relationship piece is really important to us. I'm sure it is in many other cultures as well. When we sit down and talk to people that we haven't met before, it would be natural for us, if I go to, let's say, and I'm meeting with other Indigenous people that I don't know, and I'm just meeting as a group, we always share a little bit about ourselves. Okay, we usually ask, who are you and where are you from? So, it might be starting with a question in an interview of, what would you like to share? Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself after you provide an introduction? So the selection committee is there. You give an overview of, okay, it's going to be so many, time. Here's the time. We're really glad we're welcoming you. We're glad that you're able to attend. This is the time frame. We have this many questions. We'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll give you an opportunity to actually share a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to say. And so I would always open with, I'm a Métis citizen from the Red River Valley. And, I'm a mother, a grandmother, and, my background is this, and I've, worked across Canada. So I just share a little bit about myself and maybe who my family is,
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Mohammed.
Hi, how are you? I'm so sorry for barging in so late in the meeting. I was at work, so just making time for this.
Okay, my pleasure. Not to worry. We're here now.
Thank you so much. Moving forward, we would just want to ask that how important is the engagement of the indigenous communities while being inclusive of them. I mean, how do you engage people in job opportunities and while applying for the job and um, while wanting more of them?
Okay, I think that's a really good question. So in most areas, there are organizations. There could be friendship centers. We call it the friendship centers. We could have training and education organizations, depending on where you live, or it could be a local organization that's Indigenous or a First Nations, community close to you. Reaching out to them and talking to, the director in charge of recruitment and selection or training and development, and just saying, we're interested in providing postings here to your organization for you to distribute. And, and we're wanting to attract, Indigenous people to these roles as well. And any suggestions or any ideas that you have that, would be helpful to us. So it starts with dialogue. If you just post it, they might never even see it. So it depends upon the individuals if they're using a lot of social media or not, but even they might not, that might just miss it. So I would say it starts with engaging and relationships and reaching out to the local organizations and people saying, okay, how do we do this? What's your thoughts? Do you have a little bit of insights? And can we post with you? Or what other organizations should we be approaching and posting with?
That's fine. To know more about while creating inclusive job descriptions and also the hiring processes, so what are some common pitfalls to that we can avoid while drafting job descriptions and conducting interviews for these people?
Well, when you're posting, you're going to look at the bona fide occupational job requirements and make sure that it's, you're not asking for more than you need. And you might even consider, training and development a little bit in this role. So, just really doing the basics, but opening it up and just saying, these are the crucial areas, one or two maybe, and the rest are desired, but they might not be necessary. So, looking at it from a lens of you, as, because Ishika, racialized Canadians or racialized people, what if there's any systemic barriers for you, and it would be the same for Indigenous people, so yeah, so making sure that you're not asking for more than you should. And you shouldn't do that nowadays anyway, because basically at 5% unemployment, there's really not a lot of unemployment from my experience in Canada. I live and breathe the demographics. So, you can't, you actually have to sometimes, okay, what's the basics of what we need in order to attract this person into this role? And you might be willing to train and mentor or, help that individual, get up to speed quickly. Does that answer your question? I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Brenda. I'm Ishika here.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you.
Join in late as well.
That's okay. That's okay. We're here.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, once you recruit and employ, so how the organization support them in a professional development as well as in the advancement of any Indigenous employees?
Well, I think personally, it starts with a really good transition integration plan, making sure the person has the information that they need, maybe sharing, who they're interacting with most, who they're, a little bit about the direct reports, maybe the culture, the mission, the mandate. I mean, they might know that anyway, before the interview. They should be looking at that, but maybe they don't. And, and actually have an initial onboarding transition plan for the first few months. The other thing I strongly suggest is whoever is the direct supervisor, that they're checking in with that person at least every, depending upon the role. It could be every few days or every week or more, I don't know, but that you actually are checking in. How's it going? Any challenges? What information do you need? How do I support you? And then also just feeling included, with other staff members and whatnot. Maybe assigning a mentor, that's, can talk to them about things like, well, and take them for, coffee or tea. Here's where this is, here's where that is. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. So actually having a good onboarding transition plan. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you spoke about mentor, so what role does mentorship and coaching play in retaining and empowering Indigenous talent within the organization?
It depends. A mentor when somebody starts is somebody that can just educate them on, this is how we get things done. If they need help and, let's say, the supervisor's too busy, but someone they can go to coffee with and say, okay, maybe knows the organization. How do I access, I need help with, maybe the medical stuff forms, or, what's the policy on this? Where do I find that? How flexible are you on this? Like, just, someone that has that knowledge, that organizational knowledge. And you also, so the mentor there is just to help them, educate them when they need help, another person to go to in addition to the supervisor. But this mentor should be someone that's really positive, and not negative about the organization or about, anything else, or about individuals. They're just there, someone that's like a really good, outstanding person that people like, that can help that individual coming in, So that's what I'm referring to. Coaching is a whole different story, really. And so, that's what I do now. It's a leadership coach, but that's totally different than mentoring someone when they start into an organization. They're there to help them transition as an extra resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question that pops up in my mind whenever I think about this topic is that whenever you are giving some kind of special treatment or training the indigenous people, or like going out of your way to help them or support them, how would you avoid the jealousy, or if the other employees look at you in a way that they are not being treated that good, or not being given that special treatment? So is there anything that we can do about it?
So what you're saying, Mohammed, is that the other staff are feeling that they're not getting the special treatment that Indigenous people would get?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be a problem with the organization's culture. In my mind, you would treat everybody with respect in the same way, no matter what their culture was when you hire them. You treat everybody the same. So meaning you're just as kind and informative, supportive there, that's really important. So that would be a problem with the organization.
Okay.
And that should change, in order to attract the best and the brightest, you want good, strong diversity. That's what Canada's all about.
Yeah.
Is being able to tap into, all the diversity and all the cultures. It only makes you better, as an organization.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we talk about the success and impact of these people, so how can organizations measure the success and also the impact of these people's efforts?
Well, I think you mean as a result of retaining or their performance, because you measure it really in the same way that you measure everybody else. I mean, if you have a good performance management system, it's spelled out clearly, and it's realistic, and it's achievable in the time frame with the training that they're getting, and it's shared with them and they agreed upon it. I mean, and individually, I mean, some supports that you might need might be a little bit different than another person. So it's not all the same in terms of the exact supports and training and development. So you customize it and it's individual, but it is, the general culture of the organization that it's offered to what the people need when you bring them in. I used to tell, because I founded the executive search firm, and, we had a staff across Canada, and I used to explain to my team, if we hire somebody, when we hire them and bring them in, and we have to transition them and onboard them and help them be successful and support them, if it doesn't work out, that's just as much a failure on our part. We've got to accept responsibility that we failed this person as well, because we made the decision to bring them in. So if they're not being successful, we've got to set them up for success. And it's just like, sports, if you're playing cricket, or if you're playing, basketball or hockey, coaches motivate their people in different ways, because everybody has a little bit of different motivation. and they have strengths and gifts. So personally, I believe it's about knowing and assessing too what their strengths and gifts are and for the role, and then playing to that as much as possible. And so that's, you know, that's a little bit at a higher level than what you guys are doing at the beginning level, but you know, that you know, you should be able to do that as a leader once you're a leader in an organization or you're supervising people.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that's it
Yeah.
from my side, guys. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
just
just want to ask one thing. Oh, it's okay.
okay,
You can go ahead. That's
okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
I just had one last question from you, Brenda. What can be the metrics and what can be the benchmarks that an organization can set to measure their behavior and how they're going with the indigenous people while the recruitment and having them in the organization?
Well, I think through data, I mean, how many Indigenous candidates, you know, how many racialized, how many, you know, gender diversity, you know, how many people are you attracting that you're aware of? I mean, you know, sometimes you can't answer those questions because it's discriminatory, but they're willing to share it. And then also tracking, you know, through recruitment and retention, you know, how many are you recruiting, you know, and how many are you retaining? You know, you can use employment engagement surveys. You know, are they engaged? Are they happy? You know, you do that anonymously as well online. Those are easy to do. You know, and it doesn't have to be, you know, expensive and formal. You can do monkey surveys as long as it's compiled anonymously and, you know, shared in a good way, confidentially. Yeah, so, you know, there's lots of ways to do that. Yeah, but you know, like Indigenous people are roughly 5% of the population of Canada, you know, so
Got mine.
I think it's
I
important to
just
attract everybody, not just, I think Indigenous people are, you know, until you guys might know this, but until the 1960s, 1960 actually, under the legislation of Canada, First Nations people were not considered people. They were not considered people under the legislation. I'm not quite sure what they thought we were, but you know, we weren't considered people. We didn't have the right to vote until the 1960s. We had, you know, we went to war. We fought in the two great wars, you know, for our country, but we still weren't considered people. And we were treated very differently and had very few rights. And you could also, this is important to know, you could not get a college education, a degree, a diploma, or a university degree without losing your Indigenous status. You would lose that. And for many people, you weren't even allowed to go back to your family on the reserve or, you know, I mean, there was a lot of limitations. So a lot of people, if they got educated, they didn't take their final degree, their final course, you know, they didn't take the final stuff because they didn't want to give that up. And we're playing catch up. You know, we didn't have a lot of people that were educated, but right now in Canada, we have every single category of everything, you know, from, you know, professors to medical doctors and physicians to lawyers, you know, all, you know, every, you know, chartered professionals, chartered HR people. So we have, you know, we're educated now. And, you know, so, you know, that's really helping us, you know. So we're playing a little bit of catch up. I mean, we're getting there. We have more and more people being educated all the time. So.
That's something new.
Ashika? Oh, did you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, is there any ways in the organization where one can communicate that progress and success within the indigenous recruitment internally as well as externally?
So when you say success internally with recruitment and success externally, just tell me what you mean by that. What does external mean?
Like within the organization as well as outside the organization. Like when you hit the success, it's important for the firm, right? So,
well,
yeah.
You know, again, it depends. Everybody's different. You know, I grew up in a home where you know, like I'm in my past my mid-60s now. You know, I was taught that don't tell anyone you're Indigenous. You know, I had dark hair like you do when I was younger until it went gray. But, you know, they were told don't tell anyone you're Indigenous because it's only going to hurt your career. So I had, you know, older cousins and uncles and aunties that just didn't tell that, and they lied and said they were another nationality, right? I learned to function in both areas, you know, mainstream and the Indigenous world. And because I was a hard worker and I did well and developed relationships, I ended up doing very well. So that was, all over Canada. So that, you know, I worked hard, I developed relationships, and also, you know, I had relationships in the Indigenous community too. So I was accepted in both. You know, and then probably until about 30 years ago, a lot of people didn't even know I was that in mainstream, didn't know I was Indigenous. And it was like, opening up that you're LGBTQ2S plus, but, you know, most of them didn't think anything of it. And some of them thought, wow, that's really neat. You know, thank you for sharing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so and that's it with the questions. So we'll end up here. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Brenda.
Yeah,
for-
thank
My
you so
pleasure.
much
For the
for connecting with
information.
us.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you
My
so much.
pleasure. Wishing you guys all the best. Wishing you great success in your careers. Now is a great time to be in human resources, and you know we need you. And thank you so much for being so open and reaching out as well. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
These
you.
Thank you
25
so
minutes
much.
was so informative for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.